I have never been the sort of person who enjoys drama, particularly not family drama. Still, I constantly seem to find myself exactly in the thick of everything. I guess I should start at the beginning. My name is Emily. I'm 29, and this is the narrative of how my sister Claire caught me in a maelstrom of treachery, deceit, and unanticipated repercussions. Claire is my younger sister by 5 years, which seems little, but throughout the years it has felt like an ocean separating us. I was always the responsible one growing up, the one who kept the family together, maintained harmony, and looked after things. Claire asked. Let us say then she showed little interest in duty. She was the golden child, the one my parents thought to be flawless in all respects. Though I was the one who kept my life under control, they were always more worried about her than about me. Still, I hardly noticed it too much. Generally, I never wanted to be the center of attention. I didn't give much thought to it when Claire started seeing James, her high school sweetheart. I was happy in the shadows, doing what was required of me. Naturally, I was pleased for her. She ought to be happy, I thought. James treated her well, was a decent man, smart, driven, and so on. That at least is what I thought. And that's why I didn't hesitate when Claire asked me to assist with wedding planning. I wanted to enable her to have a memorable day. After all, she was my sister, and I didn't want to be the one turning away her support on a large-scale endeavor like the wedding planning. Claire had great ideas with her usual I'm the center of attention approach. Her ideal wedding was extravagant, nothing less than flawless. Her ideal was of a great ceremony with a white horse-drawn carriage, a large guest list, a 4-course dinner, and a photographer able to catch every small detail. She didn't let her lack of money for all of that stop her, but naturally it was a factor. She expected my parents, already in their late 50s, to pay for it. She came to me when they couldn't conceal everything, first not sure why. After all, this was the big day for my sister. Working as an event planner, I had a decent job. I knew a bit about running things. I so intervened. I engaged the photographer, located the caterers, and set the location. Everything was going together rather brilliantly. I had labored for weeks, non-stop, organizing every element. I was proud of it. It would be one of those weddings people would remember for years. But somewhere along the road, things changed. Claire seemed to want more and more, and it never felt enough no matter how much I did. The wedding served more than simply a celebration for her these days. It had evolved into her stage on which she could demonstrate to everyone how much better her life was than theirs. Claire flourished on attention. Then came the moment that would turn everything around. I still remember it precisely, 1 week before the wedding. Late at night, my phone rang. She said, "Em, we need to talk. I know you've already booked everything, but I've changed my mind. It's not what I wanted." In that tone of voice, the one that made my stomach drop. I felt the blood drain from my face as she rattled off a list of big changes. We were discussing changing the photographer, calling off the caterers, and possibly moving the location. "Claire, we can't just cancel everything this close to the wedding. It will be a nightmare. It was going to cost a fortune, and there was no time to make all of this happen." She insisted, "Just do it. I need it to be perfect." I recall feeling this mix of frustration and incredulity, like I was being dragged into some kind of dream. However, I did it. I asked her not once more. I stayed quiet. I quickly called, canceled everything, and hurried to create the revised schedule. By the time the wedding day arrived, everything was in disarray. I had also been pushing myself too hard, working late into the night, making agreements with suppliers who could hurry things for a fee. Claire's definition of perfection had turned the wedding totally upside down. Not one thing was on time. The setting was disorganized. The photographer hadn't even shown yet. The caterers were late. From the sophisticated, perfect wedding I had first intended for her, it was a long cry. Claire? She gave no thought at all. She couldn't see how much the last-minute adjustments were costing her. She was so engrossed in her ideal of how things ought to look. Worse still, she barely recognized the sacrifices I had made to try to make it work. She didn't seem to notice, even though I was exhausted, anxious, and almost crying. Her whole attention was on herself. It felt as though everything around me had faded. The ceremony at last started. She was walking down the aisle, and I could not even look at her. Naturally, she looked great in her white dress, but I couldn't get rid of the sense that something was quite wrong. My gut developed a nagging feeling that indicated this was not the celebration this was supposed to be. Her treatment of me was more important than the wedding itself. Claire stood at the altar with James, and I was left standing in the background, watching as the wedding I had helped arrange, the one I had poured my heart into, collapsed. My parents had thrown all their support behind her as if I did not even exist. But what wounded more was her leaving me behind along the process. This was meant to be a family celebration, but I felt absolutely invisible. The day finished, and I was empty, emotionally spent, and tired. And I should have seen then that it never works out when you do everything for someone and they never even thank you. Claire's wedding's days seemed to fly by. I was literally and psychologically completely exhausted. Every time I tried to talk to my parents, they dismissed me, too preoccupied with Claire and her perfect day to even consider what I had gone through. Though a little appreciation would have been great. I hadn't expected a grand thank you or anything. I tried to brush it off, thinking maybe it was just the stress of the wedding talking. I had virtually killed myself to make her wedding happen, and yet I was left standing in the shadows, the invisible sister who only existed when things went wrong. But the more I considered it, the more I came to recognize how little Claire appeared to care and how much I had given for her. Not only the wedding bothered me, it was the years of being disregarded, the continual sense that I was always second place in the family, always the one who did the right thing but never received the accolades for it. That was my life. It was not going to change. The true blow came 1 week following the wedding. After another demanding day at work, I was relaxing at home when my phone buzzed with a note from my mother, one of those hazy books that set off alarms in my thoughts right away. "We have to discuss Claire." I stared at the message for a few seconds, trying to make sense of it. She is struggling and we should assist her out. Assist her out here? Out of what should she help? Wasn't this the same Claire who had been married in a lavish wedding? The one meant to be in control now? Though I had no understanding of what was happening, I felt something was off in my stomach, and called my mom right away. After the second ring, she picked up with a very strained voice. "Mom, what's going on with Claire?" Trying to keep my tone objective, I inquired. The other end stopped before she spoke, her voice now softer. "She is, then, in a small amount of financial difficulty. She borrowed a lot of money for the wedding, and right unfortunately she cannot pay it back. She's rather worried about it." I couldn't help it. I laughed bitterly. "You really ought to be joking me. Her own choices have resulted in debt. You want me to intervene and save her?" Mom gave no response right away. She seemed to be selecting her words deliberately, but I was not in the mood for deliberate. "I know it's hard, Emily," she replied at last, "but as her sister, you're the only one who can really assist. I was too furious, too upset by how the family always seemed to want me to repair things that weren't really my problems to begin with. She is your family." My pulse quickened as a tidal wave of wrath surged in my chest. "Family? Is that the term you use for this? All I have done is look after everything for her. Everything, and what in return? I experienced a wedding catastrophe and total lack of thanks, and now I have to pull her out of this mess?" Mom spoke softly and practically in demand. "Kindly, Emily. Right now, just you are the one able to assist her. She is terribly struggling." Something inside me cracked. "She is having difficulty? Her own decisions are making her struggle. She now has to deal with the fallout from her desire for a wedding she couldn't afford." I slammed my phone down, feeling a flood of irritation that threatened to explode. I am not going to tidy her mess. How would they have me supporting her? How could they expect me to position myself so that I was once more expected to be the good sister, cleaning up trash created by others? Though the calls continued, I had had enough. Mom and Dad persisted in trying to guilt-trip me into aiding Claire. "Emily, her family is here. She needs you," they would have said. Alternatively, "You are the older sister. You are responsible." I could not stand it anymore. Every time they contacted me, I felt a little more imprisoned in this never-ending cycle of doing things for Claire only to be overlooked and devalued. I had done. A few days later, Claire personally messaged me. When her name showed up on my screen, my stomach turned over. Since the wedding, I hadn't heard from her. Honestly, I hadn't really anticipated. After all that had gone through, I reasoned she would be too preoccupied with her own life to pay me any thought. Just a little crisis. What, drowning in debt, was she? I wasn't sure I had the stamina for another round of Claire's drama. Then I considered my parents, how they kept urging me to help, and how I had always been the one to pick up the pieces. I called her since I wanted to avoid being the one left out and the one having to pick up her slack once more. Her response shook her voice. I'm not happy about the wedding. I am aware that I was not simple to handle. But just now I truly need your assistance. I borrowed so much money to pay for the wedding, and I am unable to pay it back. James is not supporting me, and I am unable to visit Mom and Dad anymore. They already deal with so much. Her comments did not strike me the way most likely would have. Rather, I experienced a cold, cutting rage. It dawned on me that Claire was not contrite. She was just cornered. Now she needed someone to save her. She was the same egotistical, self-centered girl I had always known. She expected me, once more, to tidy her mess. She had no strategy or feeling of responsibility. I'm not doing it, Claire, I responded firmly. I'm not going to help you. Her quiet was intolerable. Then arrived the words I had been waiting for. But you're my sister. That was when I understood. No matter how much I helped her, it would never be enough. You are the only one who can help me right now. There is nothing I could do to satisfy Claire. She always would take, and I always would give. But I stopped being your backup plan, Claire. You have to work things out on your own. And that was it. She didn't dispute. She did not ask for permission. She simply hung up and left me to sit in the quiet that followed. The wrath melted into something else, something I couldn't exactly identify. Though the other side of me felt weight lifted off my shoulders, part of me felt guilty. I was not going to be the one carrying her issues for once. Though little knew, that was only the start of a much more extensive catastrophe. I was not going to be the one to save her. The next few days were foggy in tiredness and irritation. After our talk, I never heard from Claire. For a while I thought perhaps she had at last understood the message. She might perhaps come to see that I was no longer her safety net. I tried to concentrate on my own life, on my work, and on maintaining the best possible health of my relationship with Alex. Being pulled back into Claire's anarchy was the last thing I wanted. But as luck would have it, that was not the end of the narrative. 1 week later, I received a telegram that would utterly reverse my universe. From Alex, my boyfriend, it came. Usually, since I never really had anyone else in my corner, he has always been accepting, encouraging, and protective of me. But this time, the message he sent me made my stomach turn. I need to talk to you. I got some strange messages today. From Claire. I froze. Claire? With Alex. What on earth could she wish for? She had always despised that we were tight, always made small comments about how I was too serious with him or how I'd settled too early. Relationships to her were only transient distractions, something she couldn't really relate to. Seeing her name show up on Alex's phone made my blood stop cold. I called him right away. He picked up practically right away, sounding stressed. This is horrible, even though I'm not sure what's going on with her. Today Claire sent some texts to me. Her telling me you have been cheating on me makes my heart sink. As I hurried to understand what he was saying, I could feel the blood leaving my face. What? Say what she said. She emailed me these pictures, among you, with yet another man. You had been lying to me, she said, that you saw someone else behind my back. She even said she was ashamed to be connected to you, and that you were destroying my life. I experienced a surge of panic, then followed a terrible awareness. Not exactly. Not freakish at all. My own sister Claire had progressed this far. She was aggressively trying to ruin my life, my relationship, all because I wouldn't assist her with her mess. Feeling as though the floor was collapsing under me, I stammered and said, I don't know what to say, Alex. There's no truth to any of it. Quickly, his voice softening. You know I would never do anything to you. Still, why would she do this? She is aiming at what? Searching my mind, I tried to understand what Claire might be aiming at from this erratic action. She had never been bashful about her jealousy, but this, she was too proud to own she was wrong. Hence this seemed like something deeper, a desperate attempt to lash out. She's attempting to split us apart, Alex, and maybe she was simply too far gone in her own selfishness to worry about the repercussions. My voice shook. She is upset since I neglected to assist her with her wedding debt. She is reacting this way to me. I could hear his voice growing frustrated. Em, this is crazy. I really regret you have to cope with this. Still, we ought to chat with her. We have to halt this before it gets worse. Yet I knew it wouldn't be that simple. Claire had always been manipulative, and now it seemed she had descended to fresh lows. The idea of facing her made my tummy churn around. After spending time with Alex, I couldn't sit still. I knew what she was capable of now, and part of me worried that whatever I did wouldn't be enough to stop her. As I worked through everything, my thoughts flew. I have to learn more. I had to know why Claire had gone to such great measures to destroy everything I loved. More importantly, though, I had to guard what I had left, my connection with Alex, and my own sanity. I resolved to act. The next morning, I looked through my phone, searching for any sign of the texts Claire had sent to Alex. She had sent him pictures that, for all their intent and purpose, were utterly synthetic. I knew this, as Alex had been with me the whole evening the pictures were supposed to have been taken. We had watched movies and eaten takeout in his apartment late in the evening. No way had I been anywhere else. Where then had these pictures originated? By whom had they been taken? I gave the wedding some thought. Claire had been quite covert at times, scurrying about like she had something to hide, making phone calls and going off to chat with individuals in private. I now felt as though I had missed something crucial in the turmoil of the wedding. It wasn't until I started sifting through my camera roll that I discovered something disturbing. Pictures I had taken of Claire with someone else during the wedding. I had to go back to that night in my head, playing every single moment over. Not considering it at the time, I had taken these images on a whim. I had seen her kissing a man named Peter, someone not her fiancé. Older and well-dressed, the man seemed to be somewhat close to Claire. I had considered approaching her then, but something had stopped me. He was holding her in a manner that did not seem like a casual conversation. Perhaps it was the turmoil of the wedding, or perhaps it was because I wanted not to meddle in her personal life. Now, though, I could not ignore it. Whichever his name was, this individual had some connection to this disaster. And if Claire was going to ruin my life, then maybe it was time I returned the favor. I didn't hesitate. I forwarded the photos to Peter, Claire's husband. It felt strange, like I was crossing a line, but after everything Claire had done, I didn't feel guilty. I included a message that was simple but direct. I don't know what's going on with Claire, but I thought you should know what I saw at her wedding. She was with another man. I'm sorry to have to send this to you, but I felt you had a right to know. I didn't expect a quick response, but within hours, Peter had called me. His voice was thick with emotion, but it wasn't anger. It was something darker, something raw. I don't know what to say, Emily, he said. Thank you for sending me this. I had no idea. I'll handle it from here. It was all over within a few days. Peter moved out, taking his things and leaving Claire behind. She called me, of course, but I didn't pick up. I wasn't going to be her punching bag anymore. She had made her choices, and now she had to face the consequences. Claire had tried to destroy my relationship with Alex, and in doing so, she had destroyed her own marriage. I didn't hear from Claire for days after Peter left her. When she finally reached out, I was almost relieved. Not because I wanted to talk to her, but because I knew that whatever came next would be the last chapter in this chaotic story. Claire had never been good at taking responsibility for her actions, and I had a sinking feeling that she was about to hit a new low. The message came late one night, when I was at home with Alex. We were watching a documentary on Netflix. Nothing special, just a quiet evening after a long week of trying to rebuild what Claire had tried to tear apart. My phone buzzed, and I glanced at it. It was a text from Claire. I can't believe you did this to me. I have nothing left now. It's your fault. I read the message twice, my heart hardening with every word. There she was again, playing the victim. As always, it was like a broken record, only this time, the stakes were higher. She had lost everything, her marriage, her money, her sense of control. And now she was trying to drag me down with her. I didn't respond right away. Alex looked over at me, his brow furrowed in concern. "What's going on?" "It's Claire," I said, showing him the message. "She's blaming me for everything again. She's saying it's my fault that she has nothing left." He sighed, shaking his head. "I'm sorry, Em. This is crazy." I nodded, feeling the weight of it all. It had been crazy, every moment of it. But I couldn't keep playing this game with her. I had spent years making excuses for her, trying to fix her problems, trying to make her see the world through my eyes. But it was never enough. No matter what I did, no matter how much I tried to help, Claire had always found a way to make it my fault when things went wrong. I knew deep down that there was nothing I could do anymore. There was nothing left to salvage. She had made her choices, and now she had to live with them. So I took a deep breath and replied, "I'm done, Claire. You've made your bed, and now you have to lie in it. I'm not going to carry your weight anymore." I sent the message and put the phone down. I didn't want to be dragged back into this toxic spiral. Alex squeezed my hand, his touch warm and reassuring. "You did the right thing." And just like that, I thought it was over. But of course, I was wrong. The next few days were a blur of phone calls, messages, and half-hearted attempts from our parents to get involved. They had always sided with Claire, always tried to fix her problems at my expense, and now they were doing the same. But this time, I wasn't having it. I refused to get pulled back into the madness. It started with a call from my mom. "Emily," she said, her voice strained. "Your sister's in trouble. She's lost everything, and she's asking for your help." I rolled my eyes. I should have seen this coming. "What exactly is she asking for, Mom?" "She's drowning in debt," Mom continued, her voice growing more frantic. "She doesn't have a job, and she can't pay it off on her own. She needs you, Emily. You're the only one who can help her." I let out a short, humorless laugh. "You know what, Mom? This is exactly what I'm talking about. Why is it always me? Why am I the one who has to fix everything for Claire?" There was silence on the other end. I could almost hear her struggling to find the right words. Finally, she spoke, her tone softer now. "She's your sister, Em. You can't just turn your back on her." "I'm not turning my back on her," I said, my voice calm but firm. "I've been there for her more times than I can count. I've supported her through every bad decision, every poor choice. And where has it gotten me? Look at what she's done to me. Look at what she's done to herself. She's an adult. She needs to start taking responsibility for her life. Emily, please, don't let your sister fall apart. She needs you now more than ever." I felt a wave of frustration wash over me. "Mom, I'm not doing this anymore. I've been there for her my whole life, and it's never enough. She doesn't respect me. She doesn't care about anyone but herself." My mother's voice cracked. "You don't understand. She's going through something. Something you don't know about." My stomach dropped. Something I didn't know about? What could that be? What else had she done? Before I could ask, my mom quickly ended the call, and I was left standing there staring at my phone, more confused than ever. I didn't want to go back to Claire. I didn't want to open the door to that mess again. But something my mom had said kept nagging at me. "You don't understand." What was I missing? What had Claire gotten herself into this time? I had a sinking feeling that there was more to the story. More that Claire wasn't telling me, and more that I wasn't seeing so against my better judgment. I called her Dot. Her voice, when she answered, was hollow. "What do you want?" "Claire," I said, trying to keep my tone steady. "I don't know what's going on, but I need you to be honest with me. What's really going on? Why are Mom and Dad asking me to help you?" There was a long pause, and I could almost hear her trying to compose herself on the other end. Finally, she spoke. "You wouldn't understand, Em. I'm in over my head. I don't have anywhere to go. I don't know what to do." I felt a pang of something, maybe pity, maybe frustration. "You brought this on yourself, Claire. You made your choices." "I know," she whispered, her voice breaking. "But I'm not strong enough to face it alone. Please, Em. I need you. I really need you." I was torn. Every fiber of my being told me to walk away, to never look back. But then I heard the crack in her voice, the vulnerability that I had never allowed myself to acknowledge. Maybe, just maybe, this was the moment that Claire had hit rock bottom. Maybe this was the moment she finally realized the gravity of her actions. But even so, I couldn't be the one to fix it for her anymore. I had to stay firm. I had to protect myself. "I'm sorry, Claire," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "I can't do this for you. You've hurt me too many times. You've pushed me away too many times. You have to face your consequences." There was silence, and I could feel her seething on the other end. "You're just like everyone else," she spat. "You'll never understand. You never really cared." And that was it. She hung up. I sat there for a long time, the weight of the conversation pressing on me. But this time I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel responsible. Claire's mess was her own to clean up. I was done. The days after my conversation with Claire felt strange. There was this weird sense of peace hanging in the air, like the calm after a storm. But underneath it, there was a gnawing feeling of uncertainty, like I was waiting for the other shoe to drop. I had finally done it. I had stood up for myself, refusing to let Claire pull me back into her chaos. Yet, there was a part of me that couldn't shake the feeling that I might regret it later. Alex had been incredibly supportive, as usual. He could see how hard this whole situation had been on me. He didn't say much. He didn't need to. He just held me when I cried, listened when I needed to talk, and didn't push when I needed space. It felt like everything with him was easier, less complicated, like I didn't have to question every action, every word, every gesture. It was a refreshing change after years of dealing with the turmoil that Claire constantly stirred up. But even with Alex by my side, there was still a weight on my chest. It was hard to explain, but I kept wondering if I had done the right thing. Maybe I should have reached out to Claire again, tried to help her one more time. Maybe she really did need me. I pushed those thoughts aside. I couldn't keep sacrificing myself for someone who didn't appreciate it. Then, one evening, I got a call that I had been expecting but dreading. My mother again. "Emily," she said, sounding out of breath. "I need you to come home. It's about Claire." I knew what was coming, but I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to be pulled back into this again. "Mom, we've been over this. I can't keep doing this for her." "It's not just about Claire," my mother's voice cracked. "It's everything. You have to come." Something about her tone made me pause. Maybe it was the desperation in her voice, or maybe it was the little part of me that still hoped, still wanted to believe in family. But deep down, I knew it wasn't a good idea. I was just afraid to admit it. I glanced at Alex. "I think I should go," I said. Feeling conflicted. Alex didn't say anything at first, just giving me a long look. Then he nodded. "I get it. You need to do what feels right for you. But just be careful, Em. Don't let her pull you back into her world." I took a deep breath, steeling myself for whatever was coming. I got in my car and made the drive back to my parents' house, my mind racing with thoughts of Claire, my mother's request, and everything that had led up to this point. When I got there, it was like walking into a completely different world. The house felt emptier than I remembered, quiet in a way that made me uneasy. My parents were in the living room, sitting on the couch, looking exhausted. And Claire? She was sitting there too, with her head down, her face hidden behind her long hair. I could feel the tension in the air as I walked in. "What's going on?" I asked, my voice calm but firm. My mom stood up quickly, her face flushed. Claire has nowhere to go. She's asking for our help again." I stared at my sister. She didn't look like the person I remembered. There was no fire in her eyes anymore, no defiance, no pride. She looked small, vulnerable, almost like a broken version of the girl I used to look up to. "Claire," I said softly, though I was careful not to sound too sympathetic. "What's going on? What do you need from me?" She didn't answer right away. Instead, she looked up at me with tears in her eyes. "I'm sorry," she whispered, barely audible. "I never meant for things to get this bad. I don't know how to fix it, Em. I don't know how to fix myself." I wanted to roll my eyes, to scream, to tell her that it was too late, that she had done this to herself. But there was something in her voice that stopped me. Maybe it was the rawness of her words, or maybe I was just too tired to keep fighting her. But a small part of me wanted to believe that she was finally, truly sorry. Still, I couldn't forget the past. The countless times I had been there for her, only for her to turn on me when things didn't go her way. How many times had I helped her clean up her mess, only for her to start making new ones? No, this time it had to be different. You need to take responsibility for your actions, Claire, I said, my voice steady but cold. I can't keep cleaning up after you. I've already done that for too long. There was a long pause before Claire finally spoke. I know, I just thought I could control it. I thought I could make everything go my way, and when it didn't, I don't know how to make it stop. I don't know how to fix everything. I wanted to feel sorry for her. I really did. But the truth was, I was tired. Tired of being the person everyone leaned on. Tired of always being the one who had to clean up the mess. I can't fix this for you, I told her firmly. You need to fix it yourself. Claire's eyes filled with tears, and for a moment I thought she might collapse in front of me. I felt a pang of guilt, but I quickly pushed it away. This wasn't my problem anymore. I had done my part, and it hadn't been enough. She needed to take the first step, just like I had taken the first step toward cutting ties with her. My mother stood up, stepping toward me. Emily, please, we're begging you, help her, please. I shook my head. I can't help her, Mom. Not like this. Not anymore. Claire stood up suddenly, her hands trembling. Please, Emily, I'm so sorry. I was wrong. I hurt you. I know that now. I can't do this alone. I can't survive like this. It was the same desperate plea, the same manipulative act she had pulled before. Only this time it didn't have the same effect. I didn't feel like I had to fix her. I didn't feel like I had to protect her from the consequences of her own actions. I'm sorry, Claire, I said quietly, but I can't be the person you want me to be anymore. I turned and walked out of the room, out of the house, leaving behind the mess Claire had created. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of clarity. The weight that had been on my shoulders for so long had finally lifted. I didn't have to carry her burdens anymore. I didn't have to fix her anymore. As I walked back to my car, I glanced up at the sky. It was a beautiful evening, the sun setting in shades of orange and pink. And for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe again. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew one thing for sure. I was done being the fixer. I was done being the person who was always there for others while never receiving the same in return. It was time for me to live for myself, and for once I was okay with that.